Unlike some versions of Snow White that's coming out with all CGI'd little people, this rendition actually uses people of that stature. We are talking about the death of Snow White with director and writer Jason Brooks. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Listen, congratulations. The trailer dropped on New Year's Day. There was Daily Wire was going to do their version of a Snow White film that appears to have fallen through since they've parted ways with Brett Cooper.
Mhm.
Yours is completed, ready to go. This is in the public domain, so Mickey can't say anything to you about it. Uh, what was your desire to make this version of Snow White?
Yeah, so our executive producer, Sean Lutzis, his daughter is an actress, and they are massive Disney fans and Snow White in general. It's the favorite princess and everything. They talked about it for years about, oh, it'd be fun one day to have Sanaya play Snow White. And And we even have little photos of her growing up wearing the Snow White costume and everything. They go to Disney every year. So they just love the story in general. And they were just talking. They're sitting around the dinner table with some family one day, talking about some of the drama with the Disney thing and some things happening with the Daily Wire and stuff. And one of the family members just said, "Oh, Sanaya, you should go play Snow White." And it was kind of one of those, oh yeah, they've already cast. It's not a thing. And then her dad, Sean, was like, wait, we make movies. Why don't we make our own? So he called me up and he's like, hey, would you like to make a Snow White movie? And I was like, well, I don't know. I haven't thought about it, but if we do, I'd want to make it darker, closer to the Grimm brothers version, um, and do a little bit of a kind of a gothic horror twist to it and dark fantasy version, and not a nice, happy bubblegum version, which has been done a lot. And so that's more my style. And he's like, well, of course, I wouldn't expect anything less. So Naomi and I got to writing and came up with the story. And um, we really just fell in love with the story we came up with. And then it's just been exciting making it ever since.
Like I've covered some of the other things that have gotten into public domain. Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2. I did the press day for that. I spoke with Simon Phillips about what was originally called Mickey's Mousetrap, that they changed the name to Mousetrap because the 28 version of Mickey Mouse is in the public domain now.
Mhm.
Popeye just went into the public domain as well. I think someone made Popeye the Slayer Man.
Yeah.
Uh, and there's been several other of these grim fairy tales, but they've been horror, not gothic, in the sense that you're doing it more of a gothic thriller. From those other horror versions to now your gothic version, have you been in contact with those filmmakers, or is this something you've completely done
One
separately
of
from
our
all of them?
Yeah, it's separate. Like when we first started talking about it, that was one of our concerns is we didn't want to make, I don't want to, say cheap slasher, but we just want to make like a cheap cash grab slasher thing. That was also important to us. Because we know that immediately when someone says, "Oh, horror Snow White," it's just going to be, kind of a cheap cash grab is what everyone's assumption is. And we definitely didn't want to go that route. And at the time, I hadn't seen Winnie the Pooh or any of the other ones. I was very much aware of them, but we just kind of went on with our own and built a story around that. And as it went on, we have one of our line producers who um, knew some of these people, started contacting them as well. And in the meantime, Andrew Scott Bell, the composer for Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 1 and 2, his agent reached out and said, "Oh, Andrew's really interested to do your score." So we got to talking, and now he's going to be doing our score. So we have that connection. But it's yeah, we were trying to stay away from the idea of that kind of thing where people were kind of getting into public domain and doing that. I mean, there's been tons of Snow White movies, right, with the Huntsman and other ones in the past. So it's been something that's been kind of going on, but it does kind of fall into the timing of all these movies that you just mentioned, kind of all coming out at the same time too.
Well, Snow White's been in the public domain for about 400 years, so we're good with that one.
Yeah. And what's funny was we see a lot of comments on the trailer, a lot of positive comments, and some people, um, some of the comments there, they don't realize that Disney did not make Snow White. they didn't realize it was a Grimm Brothers movie or book years and years and years and years and years ago. They assume that we're either bastardizing this beautiful cartoon or um, or that it came first, and how did you get the rights from Disney? And it's like, well, Disney doesn't own Snow White. They own certain pieces of what they made, but yeah. And it's just kind of funny how people are now learning that it is a Grimm Brothers book and an old fairy tale and not, yeah,
Right. They own Happy Dopey Doc, etc., and then they own the blue and yellow dress. It's the bob
dress
cut,
and
that sort of
exact.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had to make sure we had some attorneys and lawyers go through everything to make sure like what can we do, what can we not do, what can we say, not say. We just want to make sure we did it the right way, and we never intended to do anything like that. We just want to make sure that we were clean and yeah, no accidental crossover.
Right. It's not a cash grab. It's a genuine story that you guys are deciding to make. It's a love for the original property as well, a love for the Disney property as well as the original property, but it's not a hybrid. So we got to make that clear.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you guys are up in Washington State, so that's a perfect setting for, southwestern France or Germany, depending where you're going to place the story.
Oh yeah, we had a great location. The executive producer has a lot of land, and we typically build our sets on there. So we built a castle and built out a set. He owns a construction company conveniently, so we're able to get that done. And we also used an actual castle out in Idaho that we found, but we built our village, our fantasy village, and all the sets just right here in Washington.
How do you go about, obviously talking to the lawyers, making sure you don't step on any toes and you don't get the phone calls from Burbank, but also paying tribute to the Grimm brothers fairy tales without making it a direct page for page turner?
Yeah, that was a fun process, actually. So Naomi and I sat down and looked at like we do want to get closer to the dark ambiance and feeling of the Grimm Brothers story. We don't want to copy it, and a lot of people want that copy. And so someone out there one day will probably make that version. But we we thought, well, what are the pieces that we want to explore? What has not been told yet? And let's make that. And so we kind of delved into some other pieces of the lore and of the story, making sure we hit all the beats that were important to people that everyone's familiar with. Everyone wants the evil queen with the turning into the witch with the apple, the kiss, the spell, falling asleep, all that. We want to make sure we got those, but how can we give that deeper meaning, or how can we explore that a little bit more and and add some new flair to it? So that's what we set out to do. And that kind of took us away, not away from the Grimm Brothers story so much as enhancing pieces that have not been told.
Yeah. Well, it looks like it's going to be a fun action type fantasy story. It's going to stand on its own merit. What was the shooting process and what has the shooting process been like for you? Because with independent films, yes, they're going to say it's 18 days of production, but it also could have taken a year and a half to get those 18 days because everyone's so spread thin.
Absolutely. It was about 11 months of writing and then getting pre-production and getting up to filming. And we shot for 20 days. And in that time, my partner Naomi, who I keep mentioning, was a co-writer. We run a special effects company together, Real Fiction Studios, and that's typically what we do on films. And so through that 10-11 month process, we wrote it. We started getting wardrobe, costumes, planning everything out, getting the people hired to do all their other parts. We started building all this practical effects for the movie, which is very effects heavy. We wanted to make sure we had a lot of practical in there, and just destroyed our house with filling it up with all these props and special effects things, and then casting everyone and showing up and just crossing our fingers that all the work that we've done can come together and happen. And luckily, we assembled an amazing team of really passionate people who just went above and beyond and really loved what they were doing. So it really shows in the film. And um, and the actors brought it. They created their own, versions of their characters. They nailed it. So when you watch it, it has a lot of heart, which is really fun for me. People we had 9 test screenings, I think 9, but yeah, people laughed, people cried, They were surprised by some of the emotion in it. They're surprised by the humor. They're surprised by the gore, and the feedback has been that it's very balanced. The some in horror and gore, while there's enough of this love and humor that it are palatable. And then people who were these guys don't they were like, well, the look was actually good. I was kind of in my seat, like, what's going to happen? And so it seems like we hit a nice balance with these things that's pleasing a lot of people.
Well, that's good. The beautiful thing about independent films is you're able to tell the story the way you want to tell it without being confined to, what management from studios want to come in and say, hey, you need to add a dog here, you need to do something else here. How about we add a kid and the story of their love for a goldfish or whatever, people want to put their hands in the cookie jar, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how exciting is that for you when you get to create your own independent story the way you want to do it?
It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of fun, and it's ultimately the responsibility comes down on you because you're the one doing it. We do have producers on here who and executive people who put money into it, and they want to see certain things, and they want you have to please the people who are trying to fund your film, and they might want less of something, more of something. So you do have a little bit of that, but definitely not as much as like a big budget studio is going to like dictate so many things. But we did have a lot of fun just being able to write what we wanted with only the limitation of funding and budget. It's a finite budget, so we can't go too elaborate. So we had to dial back a little bit, um, realize we can't spend this much on this, so let's pull that scene or combine these things. So we did have limitations on money, quite a bit, and
Academy Award where it was the main statue and then the seven little individual ones. We got to see that at Disney Studios when we've been there. You know, what's it like when there's that also pressure of, hey, there's that Disney one, that animated one, but people are also disheartened with their live action remake versions.
yeah, there's a lot, and you see it's very divided out there. So some people just automatically love the Disney one. It just means a lot to them. It's their childhood, and so they're going to support that no matter what. But we also have the other extreme where people don't want to support it, and even if it could be a good movie, and we haven't seen it yet, we don't know, but they don't want to support it and they hate it already. And some of the decisions made, taking out the kiss, the casting choices, the CGI for the dwarfs. And so there's a lot of that there. And so in some ways, there's some just general disdain and hate for Snow White in general right now. So then people will see ours and go, oh, another one to mess this up when they haven't even watched the trailer. They don't haven't watched the movie. They don't know. And other people are like, oh, this one looks better than the Disney one. I'm totally going to go see this. And let's get a group together and show Disney that we support indie film or that someone else could do better. And so we have people who are planning to go find groups of people to go watch ours out of spite, not knowing anything about it. And so there's just a lot of divided fans out there.
These are very interesting times. I saw a posting of most anticipated films, and everything has either been a remake, a sequel, or a prequel for 2025. And that's been disheartening because I want something original. Like
Hmm.
I just saw the for review, it comes out in a couple of weeks, the Jackie Chan A Legend film. And
Yeah.
that is a unique spin on an archaeologist who's discovering and going through the wars against the Hans and almost reliving the experience of the people that actually fought it while they're doing the archaeological excavations. And that was an interesting take because it's something we haven't seen either ever or in a while that's refreshing. And with
Hmm.
your story of Snow White, it's different than the Huntsman that Universal put out. This is different than the Disney version that's being put out. Um, I always hear people say that maybe they should remake bad movies that had good plots instead of good movies that were already beloved by people. So that's a different take on things. When you do something like this versus some of your other projects, obviously this one seems to be the most pressure because of the legacy of the story. But as an independent filmmaker,
Hmm.
isn't that part of the beauty of the challenge in making movies?
Oh, absolutely. We definitely have about five, six of our own original content, original IP movies that we want to make. And this one just, the timing was such that it just made sense to do this one now. So we took this one on, but um, it is quite a challenge. And everyone has their idea of who Snow White is, what the story should be. It should be like close to the cartoon. It should just be the cartoon, or only the cartoon should exist. Or no, the cartoon doesn't exist. It should be the Grimm brothers. It should only be the Grimm brothers, and it should be word for word to the book. And you just, at some point, you realize you can't make everyone happy. Like when I made the Friday the 13th Vengeance movies, we had people who had their own idea of what Jason Voorhees is. And so people come out and say, no, this isn't right. Jason doesn't kill during the day. But then you can go back to every movie in the franchise and say, well, here's a day shot where he's killing. Here's a day shot. Here's a day shot. But in their mind, Jason doesn't kill during the day, or he only kills on Friday the 13th, which is also not true. So people will make their own decisions of what a movie is, what it should be, things that they look forward to seeing. And if you don't hit that for them, it might ruin it for them. But then at the same time, you can make a lot of people really happy with giving them new things they didn't expect. So it's just, as an indie filmmaker or any filmmaker, you just have to kind of realize you can't make everyone happy. Just make the movie you want to see.
Hmm.
And hopefully other people have the same taste.
Well, let's hope that it's going to be enjoyable for other audiences. I'm interested in seeing how things come about for you because I'm a huge fan of indie film, especially when they're either micro budget or had limited shoot times. Like, for example, when the Gem and the Holograms movie came out was at the same time as Transformers 4, and although they were both Hasbro properties, I was far nicer to Gem and the Holograms because they had 14 days to write all the songs, shoot the movie, and produce the entire thing versus Transformers that had a year and a half to do it. And, I wasn't a fan of the fourth installment in that regard. So when you get something like, hey, this one only had 14 days and look what they were able to pull off versus they had a year and a half and that's what they gave me, it's not the same thing. It's two totally different production styles.
Absolutely. And we had a excuse me, we had a recent comparison with some shots. And we were talking, somebody mentioned Dune, like, oh, this is a great shot. This is how you should be thinking about it. And this is whatever. And we watched this documentary on this one shot from Dune. It was like a 13-second or 16-second shot of the movie that took 44 days to film for this one little small piece. And it's like, well, they had 44 days and millions of dollars to do this. Our budget is less than 700,000, and it's what we spent on our entire budget, beginning to end, marketing, putting it together, production is less than like what Disney is spending on their stand-ups that go into the movie theater.
Right.
They're spending more on posters and stuff and than we have for our entire movie. And so it's really hard to compare, it's not an apples to apples thing, no pun intended, but we really definitely appreciate people like you who are open-minded and say, well, I realize that there's budget constraints. I realize that you can't make everything look like a Marvel movie or a Disney movie. And not that we want to either, it's good to have different variations. And some of the feedback has been they love how our fantasy world is kind of grounded in a gritty reality. It looks more like, even though there's magic and things happening, people feel like, oh, this could actually exist.
Sunshine and Roses.
Right, right. It was dirty and it was, poor in places, and it was not elaborate and glowing and pretty CGI. So it's it somehow worked in our favor, I think.
It's also like when you go to, say, a Broadway production versus a local small town production, it's not going to have the same financial backing. So you have to expect to pay attention to the talent and the level being poured into it versus,
Mhm.
oh my God, they had this incredible stage design where they were able to do X, Y, Z, and, it's Aladdin and they made the carpet fly versus, hey, we had to figure out how to rig this thing to make it look like or suspend disbelief that the carpet's flying.
Absolutely. Yeah. And same with music, musicians and bands. Some people can get on stage and do an amazing performance without the spectacles and the lights and the background, and fire. And, it's cool to see, you want to see all that stuff and it feels amazing. But then sometimes, bands don't have that and musicians don't have it, so they'll perform on stage but do an amazing performance without all the flair. So um, it's and both are good. Both can exist in the same world and be amazing experiences.
Right. Indie film has proven for quite a while, but now it's become to the full realization that Hollywood isn't necessary to make films. You know, everybody has a 4K camera in their pocket. Soon everyone's going to have an 8K camera in their pocket. You know, Seattle has a film scene. Austin has a film scene. Atlanta is huge. Orlando is picking up. Colorado has some stuff going on. You know, how much more freeing is that where you get to make the films that you want without having to leave the state and out without having to deal with the constrictions of, oh, if you're going, like, there was an independent filmmaker I spoke with here in California that had the cops called on him because he didn't get a permit to shoot inside his own home. You know, how freeing is that that you get to shoot in your own backyard and no one's going to say anything to you?
Yeah, it is very freeing. For the real fiction company we have with special effects, we do travel around a lot to all these other states, including California. And it is nice to be home. And one of our goals is to bring more film, with the success of this, we hope to bring more film into the Northwest and being able to do more with it, build sets and things that a lot of filmmakers out here don't have access to that they can use. It's it's so nice to be able to find things. And in fact, the last time I was down in Hollywood working on a film down there, uh, I was acting in that, and then I had people talking to me about, well, do you have stuff up there we could do? I'm losing money here. We're not getting a lot of jobs in LA. What do you have in Washington? Should I move up there? It sounds like it's, starting to pick up. And so it's becoming a thing where you don't have to live in LA anymore. You can live remotely and fly in to go do your thing, or you could fly to Atlanta, you could fly wherever the project is. And and there's so much talent. And with the lower price of cameras and the more accessible programs and everything to make movies happen, there's more options now. And so it's not just one location. Steve Johnson, he's amazing legend in special effects, worked on Ghostbusters, The Men in Black, and Species, and just every awesome 80s movie you could think of. He was at our house a couple months ago, or I guess several months ago before we filmed Snow White, and he saw the stuff we had ready to go, all the practical effects, and his mind was blown. He was like, I had no idea this level of talent and this kind of stuff lived outside of Hollywood. Like, what is going on? I've never seen this. And he was just blown away. And it just kind of goes to show that it's happening, it's expanding. And there is talent in a lot of places in the US outside of Hollywood. And we're starting, thankfully, to be able to see a lot of those movies and projects come out of those people.
Well, we do have 350 million people in this country, so there's going to be talent everywhere.
Right, right. And like making it so you only have to be in this one spot makes it really tough for everyone.
You know, 30, 40, 50, 100 years ago makes perfect sense. Now that we don't have to deal with film anymore and everything's being shot digitally, it's a lot easier to stay in Seattle or go to Washington. You know, the new Wolfman movie takes place in Oregon, and though, Sasquatch movies and werewolf movies, those are always going to have an audience. So,
Oh yeah.
who knows? And you're in Seattle, so Sasquatch is a huge legend up there.
Hmm. Absolutely. And having it be spread all over, you get more diverse talent from everywhere. And because if you do everything in LA, there's only a finite number of projects that can happen in that time. And those same people, kind of go in there. So it's hard to break into that. So now you have pockets everywhere else that people are starting to rise from. So,
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're having a good time. How's post-production going on the Death of Snow White?
oh, wonderful. It's out there right now getting color graded, getting the sound done. I was talking to Andrew Scott Bell this morning. He's composing it. He's making music for it. He's got a couple little clips he's putting on his TikTok and channel, and we posted on our socials medias as well. It's sounding beautiful. And the VFX guys to do some of the cleanup and some of the magic stuff it's impossible to do practically. It's all happening and coming together. So that's really fun to see everything kind of start to come to this end. So,
Horror movies and I'm not saying this is a horror movie, but there are horror elements to it. We'll say it's more of
Oh
an
yeah,
action thriller in this regard. Tend to come out in mid-spring, like in May or September, October, and then occasionally in December. Are we looking for a spring release or a Halloween release?
definitely spring. We were going to try to go for the 21st, same time as Disney. Um, but with talking with distributors and different things like that, we're finding that there might be some trouble with Disney. They may not want us to be there at the same time in the same theaters. They might, they make these theaters a lot of money. So people don't want to hurt other people or step on other people's toes. So we'll probably be going sometime, my best guess right now, without the contracts all being signed and everything finalized, probably the first week or two of April is
Okay.
uh, is what I'm guessing.
All right, so we are looking for a spring release for The Death of Snow White. Um, yeah, because if you were releasing it roughly at the same time, it throws us back to the notion of Michael Keaton's Jack Frost family film that came out roughly within a week or two of the horror film that came out with Shannon Elizabeth.
Yeah. Yeah, and would have been fun to be at the same time as the Disney Snow White live action one and have the option to go see one or the other or both and um and have a little bit of a, I don't want to say competition, but the people are going to talk about both and they're going to say, "Oh, I went and saw this and I like this one better." It's like, "Well, I didn't like that one at all. I like this one better." And I like both, or I didn't like it. It gives a lot of talking points to have that. And although Disney is Disney and they would crush us with a single step, we never have any thoughts that we could ever compete or outdo them in any way. But it's just kind of fun to be in theater at the same time, as this and have that option. But yeah, we'll still be close. It probably still will be in theaters the time we're in theaters, but um, it'll be a very interesting time.
Yeah, and your cast looks fantastic. Some of them are familiar faces. Some of them have been character actors. Some of them do independent Scream Queen films. Take us through putting the cast together for this one.
Yeah, the Snow White was always our first person cast. We knew that she was going to be Snai Lucis. We knew she was going to be Snow White from the beginning, and that's how this all started. So everything is kind of built around that. The Evil Queen, we had so many different options in mind and people we were talking to and deciding if we were going to go seg. We weren't going to go seg. We tried that route and our budget would have almost doubled if we went seg because of all kinds of reasons. So it just wasn't, the money wasn't there to double the budget to be able to do that. So we had to go with some non-union people or FICOR people or whatever it is that we could do. So we put our casting call out and we had a couple of agents helping with that, particularly with the little people to play the dwarfs, which was one of the hardest things to do. Finding little people with great talent, acting and history and stuff, and who are available at the time because we had some great auditions, but some people just weren't available for the filming times, etc. And that and the prince were the toughest. We had hundreds and hundreds of auditions for the prince. It was really hard because some people were good, but the chemistry seemed off or it just wasn't quite right. And then when Tristan came along and we saw his audition, Naomi and I were looking at, we nearly were in tears because we're like, oh, he's perfect. This is the one. And luckily he was available. We got him. Chelsea Edmondson, who Army of the Dead, Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead, she's the bride in the beginning. She was our evil queen and she sent her audition. Originally, she was going to try to be Snow White's mother. And we were looking at Alyssa Sutherland, Rise of the Evil Dead,
Mhm.
which I get it right one, still working on my coffee. Um, but we were looking at her to be the evil queen at first. And then when the SAG thing kind of went apart, we started looking other directions and Chelsea auditioned for that. And she was perfect. So there was no other question. We got Chelsea in right away and she nailed it. It was like, I can't imagine a better choice. But yeah, the little people with the dwarfs, that's where we were moving people around and getting auditions and in the end we got an amazing group, amazing cast. With they all came in, gave 150% and were just phenomenal to work with. Professionally, personally, they were all just amazing people.
Well, I'm excited to see the final product and when everything's ready to roll out into theaters. What would audiences expect from your film in comparison to Disney's film that's coming out?
Oh yeah, we definitely on our film we have a much darker tone, and it's like I said, it was we were calling it a dark fantasy gothic horror film or a dark fantasy with horror elements. The thing that people don't expect is the humor. They laugh more than they expect. There's some fun moments in it. It's a fun adventure movie, really, and people have a lot of fun with that. And it's got dark moments that are scary and creepy and some tension. And there's also just this ick factor with the evil queen. We have her, and we talk about it in other places. Her thing, she loves beauty, and she does a lot of beauty practices that we looked up, and they're all real that have happened in history. There's barbaric, gross beauty practices that have been done to women in history. So she does these, and it makes people cringe. So
Elizabeth
definitely
Bathory was
go.
quite well known for having, bathed in her handmaiden's blood. So
Exactly, exactly. So it's that type of thing is one of those, and you see hints of some of it in the trailers that things have happened. But when you do watch it, just know that everything that she's doing to herself or with the other people, those things happened, and in real life at some point in history. So there's that kind of dark element to it, and then there's the playfulness, the fun, humor, and the love story. It's like it worked. And Sanaya and Tristan, Snow White and the Prince, they sold it. Their chemistry was great, and I think it's just a fun movie. Everyone leaves the theater after watching it smiling and talking about it. So I think yeah, it's just an unexpected happy movie to see.
without giving too much away, because we don't want spoilers. I mean, obviously we're familiar with the Grimm story and we're familiar with the Disney one, so there's going to be crossovers throughout. But is there a particular scene that you shot that you seem most proud of for this film? That like that's the scene that resonates the most, either with me, the cast, or I'm hoping will reach the audiences.
Ooh, we talk about that a lot. There's so many scenes, and I've seen the movie close to 100 times now with all the edits and the previews and the test screenings. And every time I'm watching, I'm like, oh wait, this moment's coming up, and I get excited because the audience is going to see this moment. And then that moment's over, and I'm like, oh wait, this one's coming up in my head. I'm just like excited for the next moment for them to see whether we get a gasp or a laugh or startle or something. And I think the ending of the movie, the last 20 minutes or so, as it builds up, is we hit it on all cylinders because everything's able to come together. So there's the story comes together, um, elements of the people, the story, the characters, it all kind of unfolds and is happening with practical effects that are some of our best practical effects that we're really proud of. And the acting is amazing. The scene, the set, everything just kind of comes together there. And I would have to say I can't say which scene it is, but it's towards the end. I'll say that for now.
I'm digging it. And we're looking for theatrical distribution and eventually on VOD.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Jason, where can we find the trailer and where can we also find the website along with social media handles so we can follow you on that?
Sure. The trailer is on YouTube. You just search The Death of Snow White, or you could go to www.deathofsnowwhite.com and the trailer will be on there. We have a mailing list if you want to sign up to find out about release dates and times and locations to find a theater near you. So that's all we're going to use it for is kind of giving you updates and information on there. And you could find Death of Snow White on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter and TikTok.
Awesome. Jason Brooks, thank you so much. Writer, director of The Death of Snow White, coming this spring. Not a direct competition with Mickey and his new live action CG version, but definitely one that we are keeping our eyes open for and willing to be excited about. So hopefully audiences will have the same reaction.
Thank you so much.